I'm totally muted. Oh my gosh, I do this like every time. Okay. It's a good thing I accidentally had YouTube like up in the background. This is live, so here we are. Hi, I'm Kristen, and it's my birthday this month. I just turned 39, and let me tell you, it's really weird to be almost 40 and not quite. Almost no longer a young professional, yet still technically I am a young professional. I don't know. So how has my entrepreneurial style changed since my debut into solopreneurism when I was like, I think my first official like Schedule C was filed when I was like 17 or 18. Like, how's it changed? And, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being middle-aged or older young professional as an entrepreneur? Because there's both. There's advantages and definitely disadvantages. So today, basically, I want to talk about fostering youthful optimism that really creates lifelong opportunity and hopefully joy, happiness, contentment, satisfaction with what you got going on. Okay, so you guys are all gonna laugh. I still cannot, I have tried to remember what to say when I start these things, and I can't, so I wrote it down. Welcome to Craft Leftovers live stream. I'm Kristen M. Roach. I'm the creator of craftleftovers.com and author of Mend It Better. I'm an artist, an author, entrepreneur, and each month I visit with you live and we talk about creative entrepreneurism. Make sure to visit the craftleftovers.com blog and you can get the post-show recap. Any resources or anything I mention or that come up in the chat, if anything comes up in the chat, I'll make sure to list in the show notes. And anyway, with that out of the way, as I was kind of setting up today, I thought I might mention, like, why am I here? This kind of came up a little bit when I was chatting with Crispina French, but like, what's the whole reason I'm doing this anyway? Like, why am I starting a live stream at almost 40? Like, why am I interviewing contributors for a book that's out of print? And I was like, ooh, man, you came out swinging. That is a good question for me. You can tell she's interviewed a lot of people. And the thing is I think it's partly to give myself a place to share some of the experiences I've had as a creative entrepreneur. Hopefully, so that way the next generation of creative entrepreneurs can learn from my mistakes, learn from my successes, and etc. But the other thing too is I've got my ruler. I'm serious, like a serious grammar teacher. And the thing is why the live stream then? Like, that kind of makes sense for the interviews. It makes sense a little bit for the live stream, but like, why live? Why not just a podcast? And I guess I kind of have this idea, and maybe I've just been a little too timid to even put it out there, but I want you to join me in the conversation. Like, I want you to come ask me questions. I want you to give your comments. I want you to come craft with me. Like, that's part of it too. Like, come hang out, come craft. And so I think, going forward, so say for next month, I think maybe I just need to be a bit more frank about that. Like, I want you to come hang out. Like, I want to hear what you have to say as much as give myself a place to say the things that I want to say. Like, yeah, so, and I know this is like just getting started, and so there's that too. But yeah, I think that's what this is about. So next month, I'm going to actually invite you. I'm going to say, instead of like, just come ask me your your business questions, I'm going to say, like, come hang out with me. Come work on a project with me and share what you know too, and what's concerning you right now, and what you're into, where you're struggling, all that kind of good stuff. Anyway, so today I found this. I was decluttering and going through my guest bedroom, and I found this amazing bag. Okay, so for when this becomes a podcast at a later date, I am holding up this crocheted bag, and it's almost kind of like carpet bag style, and it is pink and brown and white, and I'll link to the pattern because it is actually a pattern. I don't know if I ever put it on the blog, but I do know it's definitely in one of my zines. And I kind of just shoved a bunch of stuff in here. So I've got, this is probably one of my favorite patterns too. It's inspired by a sewing box my great-grandma made, and I made a little mini version to go alongside of it. And then there's a bunch of like mending on the go zines. So this just, this is one of those funny little things that just makes me super happy. I've got a felt sewn bird that has a bunch of pins in it. Probably my favorite pin cushion ever, which is knit garter stitch, bunch of little scraps. It's so cute. Yeah. What am I actually going to be working on today? I've got a couple different projects because I wasn't sure how long they were going to take. I've got my scissors. I've got thread. All right, bag goes back over there. And I've got needles and all that kind of good stuff. Let's see here. Okay, so a little bit about the project that I'm working on today, and then I will say the things I was thinking about saying. I don't know how long today's live stream will be. Might not go a full hour. Might go over an hour. I don't know. I figure it doesn't really matter. I get to kind of do what I want. That's kind of the joy of it right now. So I have this jersey knit cotton fabric, and it is, I guess at this point it's a vintage Liz Claiborne pajama set. Oh my gosh. And like, knowing what I know, I'm like, but about Liz Claiborne. But it's what I got, so I might as well fix it up. So I love this thing. It's so comfy. It's got this white dot pattern, and it's a fun pajama shirt with buttons up the front. But the issue is that ever since I bought this thing forever ago, so it practically looks new, the buttonholes are too big. And like, how many of you have this problem, right? Like, buttonholes too big. So I'm just going to make them a little smaller. That's all I'm doing today. So I've got like 5 buttonholes, and I'm just going to do a little whip stitch over one side to make it just a little tighter, because every time I would try to wear this, the front would open up. How embarrassing if that was not, of course, just in my own home, but it's definitely something that, and I think this is the real power of mending, is it takes something that, is a perfectly good garment, but for whatever reason it has ended up in the back of your dresser, the back of your closet, and you really like it. It's comfortable, maybe it even looks good, and whatever else, and yet you still just don't wear it. You don't use it. And eventually you get rid of it, hopefully, if you're not using it. Or you can mend it and make it so it is something. A friend of mine, Janae, actually owns a shop, and she does like tailoring, and a big thing that she does for people is she will go through and edit their closet with them. And they'll go through it together, and she's very good at this, and she's like, tell me about this item here. And she will let the person explain, like, what is this thing? You know, like, when was the last time you wore this? Does this still fit? If it doesn't fit, why are you still holding on to it? And that's pretty amazing. Those are they're very surprisingly powerful questions. I remember the first time she asked me those questions about some stuff that I was holding on to in my business space. And I was just like, I don't know. Let's get rid of it. Like, why am I holding on to this stuff? Anyway, it all comes back to decluttering and using what you got, right? Like, that's what we're all about. So, but there are some items, she has found that you do want to hold on to, and they just need a simple fix. But a lot of people, or sometimes they need to be tailored, like officially, legitly by someone like Janae. And so she'll take clothes that people love and make them usable again. It's pretty fabulous. If you want to check her out, I'll also link that in the show notes. I think she might even work virtually with some clients. I could be wrong about that. Don't hold me to it. Anyway, her business is called Thread It. Okay, so I am like getting going on this. I decided to go with some matchy blue thread to match. And I'm already making mistakes. How lovely. Okay, so I think I'm going to show you what I'm working on while I chat, because I'm just going to be sitting here like sewing on this. So let's see if this works. Oh wait, we gotta swing this around. There we go. I don't know if you can even really see. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Let's try zooming in. All right, there we go. So I think this is gonna go pretty fast. Anyway, I've waxed poetic about mending long enough. The topic at hand, getting older. So I have a little bit of news to share. This is pretty exciting. Before I go into what I prepared. I'm just kind of rambling at this point. So this last week, I did something, for me, it felt pretty amazing in that I went on, I'd call it a hermitage. I've never done this before. I did something similar last year, but I went with a friend around both of our birthdays in April, and so we went backpacking. Was that the year before last? Time flies really fast. And it was just a really great time to reflect and kind of restore, get out in nature, have a nice time, have some good conversations, figure some things out. And so this time I was trying to make plans with her again. I was trying to make plans with my sister, and nothing was working out. And I talked to my partner about it, Jason, and he's like, why don't you just go? Like, why do you need someone else to like allow you to do this thing you clearly want to do? And then I was all like, well, do you and Lucy want to go? And he's like, honestly, not really. He's like, I don't really want to go hiking a ton. Lucy's not quite up to the task of hiking a ton. Don't really want to stay in like an isolated nature spot. I'd rather, like, if I'm going to take time off, I'd rather do something different than that. And he's like, but I can tell you really want to do this, and you should just do it. Like, what's stopping you? And I'm like, oh man, that's a good question. And so I did it. And my sister did end up being able to come out and join me for one of the days. And so, yeah, it was kind of this birthday hermitage in the wild. Not too terribly wild, but just, I think I actually had 2 full days where I did not talk to a single person. And I cannot remember the last time that happened. And I know some people would find that absolutely terrible. But for me, it was just what I needed. And I ended up hiking 20 miles in about 2 days, plus some just more casual walks. And I did 5 paintings. and I read a lot, and I listened to a lot of music, and I journaled a little bit, but not a lot. And it was wild because like I was never bored. It was just really peaceful. And when I was tired, I went to sleep. And when I felt like waking up, I woke up. And the weird thing was, I fell into this after, and pretty quickly, I fell into this pattern of going to bed at about 9:30, 10, and waking up at like 6:37. And now that I'm back, I think I'm going to try to like honor that schedule, like that natural schedule my body fell into when I just kind of listened to it. And I don't know. It was wild. Like I've never had this the time. Well, I don't know. I probably have. I probably have had the time and resources to make something like this happen before because you don't, it doesn't have to be real complicated, is what I found. It was just really lovely. So I learned some things while I was there, and I really just tried to carry those back with me. There's a lot of like post-trip blues that can happen in my case. I don't know if everybody's like that, but I'm definitely like that. And I was really concerned that I would come back just like a total grump. That, I was encouraged to go do this thing that's supposed to be like restorative and all that jazz, and it was, and then come back and just get kind of like crabby about like, oh, I have to go back to work, or I have to do the laundry. So I really tried to carry like that contentment and that sense of just like satisfaction and calm back home. And it's not like 100% successful, but I think it's definitely more successful than I had been in the previous years. So that was a win. Anyway, one of the big things, and I swear I'm bringing this all back around, is that I had originally planned on doing this live stream from essentially like the cabin in the woods. And I was going to bring like all my lighting equipment and like all my stuff. And I was going to do it. And it was the night before we had some friends over for dinner. And I was like, I think maybe I'm putting too much pressure on myself. Like, except for my own expectations and my own commitment to myself to do this thing every second Thursday or Wednesday of the month. Like, like I don't even know if anybody comes when it's live. Like, it doesn't seem like they do. Like, I get a few views after the fact, but it just seems like what works for my schedule doesn't necessarily work for other people's schedule. And so, like, who really cares? And I know that there's a big part about, like, consistency and about, if you say you're going to be there, be there. And yes, that is very important. But, and maybe I guess, so this is how I'm bringing it back around. I think this is a big difference between when I was 29 versus 39, is that, like, regardless of my own personal mental health and my own personal, just like, kind of like, I don't know, I would set all these expectations, and it didn't matter. Like, I would always follow through, no matter what. And sometimes then, a lot of times, the no matter what was my own health. And as someone who's always, like, suffered from chronic health, that seems like, why would I do that? and, and I think that's just something I've learned. And oddly, I don't know that it's so much being in business for so long, as like being a mom. because instead of it just being about my own health, I saw how it was affecting my child when I did that, like when I got really run down or when I overcommitted myself. And so I think one of the big things that's maybe changed since I was younger is that if there's not going to be a major ramification for me politely stepping out of things or like rescheduling things, I I just go ahead and do it. I find most of the time if I have to call and reschedule a meeting, and of course it kind of depends what it is, and you can make that judgment call at the moment. But most of the time, as long as it's not something that's like super time sensitive, it's not a big deal. And I used to make it into a big deal that like if I had to call and reschedule a meeting with somebody that I had set something up, or like say hanging out with a friend, and I was having a really difficult day, or I was having like a lot of other things on my plate, or if I really just didn't want to. There's a lot of things you have to do in your life, but I found that it's not the things that I have to do in my life that are the problem. It's like the things that I tell myself that I have to do. And so I think that perspective has really shifted. It's not to say like, I think I was so afraid of people thinking I was a flake, which is something that I was told when I was a lot younger, and which was out of my control. Like I had a lot of health issues, like legitimate like seizures and migraines. And someone kind of offhandedly mentioned that, well, that's fine because all artists are flakes. And they would never know like how much that affected me. But it was like in my soul, it was like I just was kind of like, I will prove them wrong. I will never be a flake, which actually caused me to get like to this overwhelmed state, which then I did have more of a tendency to flake out when it mattered because I was just completely overwhelmed or I couldn't prioritize. I almost feel like this button is going to fall off. Interesting thing about buttons. A lot of buttons, like when you get your, I don't know if you can see this. Focus. Oh, it's like it really wants to focus. And here's like the 5 minutes where I'm trying to get my camera to focus on the thing. Well, that's close enough. Anyway, when a button is machine sewn on, it doesn't actually tie off a knot. It just goes around and around like a million times, and eventually that thread will kind of like work its way out. You can kind of see here, so I don't know how long this button is going to last. So I'll try to just secure it a little better. Anyway, that's something I still really struggle with is, being concerned about people thinking I'm a flake. And so I have a tendency to like push through when I shouldn't. Screw it, I'm not doing that right now. It still seems pretty secure. It'll come off when it comes off and I can re-sew it then. Yeah, so that's something I still struggle with is like how to prioritize and also like when to bow out when it makes sense, when there's, especially if there's not going to be a huge consequence, So, for instance, I opted to just reschedule the live stream to this week, and that's okay. So, you all are going to get a live stream this week, and the next week you're going to get a really nice interview with a contributor of Mend It Better I had a really nice chat with. this week is, no, not this week, next week is Earth Day, and it's kind of like a great, it's a great conversation to hear on Earth Day, I feel like. I'm saying a lot. Maybe I shouldn't mend and chat at the same time. It's distracting me a lot today. Okay, so I made a list. We're just going to totally change gears here. I made a list of the difference between, initially I looked at like the difference between 29 and 39. Then I realized I've been an entrepreneur since 19-ish, probably younger. So I looked at 19 versus 39. So like at 19, everything is new. Everything. Around that time is the first time I filed my Schedule C. Which, if you haven't done that, that's what you should be filing if you're a sole proprietorship. I had never filed sales tax before. I had to figure that out. I didn't know what things I could expense as business expenses. I didn't know the difference between liabilities and assets. Depreciating assets, etc. So there's just like some technical things that I didn't know and I was experiencing for the first time. And like once you know them, you just kind of know them and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's kind of the thing, is that it gets a little easier, right? Because like you're not having to learn some of those basic things anymore. Like you know how to file your taxes. Maybe you've even hired an accountant at that time. That's pretty awesome. I love having an accountant. But at 39, there are still discoveries to be made. So like don't lose hope. Like, oh, I've already learned it all. Like don't feel that way either. That's not a good place to live. That's not a good headspace to be in, because you'll always be learning new things, because hopefully you're always growing your business, yourself, your work. And so yeah, at 39, I'm still discovering new things every day. Like for instance, even with the whole like tax thing and etc., or like food license, right? Like I know how to do food license, no big deal. Well, they decided to implement a whole new system in the state of Iowa for how to do your sales tax or your food license renewal. So I had to like relearn some stuff. I had to read some guides. I had to get through it. It's not always technical like that. There's also still that sense of discovery too. Like when you're younger, every place you travel is new. There's lots of firsts that are happening all the time. And when you get older, you kind of fall into patterns, which is good because it allows you to be like more efficient and to get maybe even more work done than you did when you were younger. Enjoy life more fully than you were younger, maybe, or have more appreciation. I don't know. I feel like I appreciate things more than I did when I was younger. And, but there's still like discoveries to be made, right? Like, and you don't have to go really far. It's fascinating because, when I was 19, that's also the first time I went abroad. I did a study abroad in England and traveled to France and Scotland, Ireland, and all that good stuff. And everything was new and exciting and wonderful and serene and beautiful and amazing. Well, the really good news is I can also drive 3 hours to a little tiny town in Iowa on the Mississippi and get that same sense of wonder and mystery and calm and excitement and discovery and exploration, as when I went all the way to France. Like, you can travel far away, but you can also travel close to home and experience really amazing things. I love the idea of being a tourist in your own town or your own area. I've started doing that with like Des Moines and even with Ames, where every Thursday now Lucy and I take a field trip. She gets out of school. We don't have after school care on Thursdays. And so I take off work early and we go on we say we're going on a field trip, right? And sometimes the field trip is like Reman Gardens. Other times it's like, oh, like one time we went to Campus Town to go to like grandma's attic and like beach shop. And we got bubble tea and like, we pretended like we had never been to Campus Town before and like went to the comic book store, like all that kind of stuff. And just kind of like hung out. Like we didn't know where anything was. And part of it too has been experiencing things with my daughter, who's just about 9. Like that has definitely reawakened a sense of discovery for me of like, seeing how amazing she finds things has helped me see how amazing everyday things can be. Okay, so next on my list, these are not in order. All-nighters all the time. When I was 19, I remember I stayed up for almost 3 days straight to finish a paper. And I really, I did not have a great reason for why I did not have it done, other than I hadn't worked on it. And I think now it's not just that I wouldn't sacrifice myself quite like that to get something done, but it's also that I'm fairly positive it just wouldn't be necessary in the first place because I'm significantly better at time management than I was when I was 19 or even 29. I've had enough businesses now, or business experiences working just in general with other people, with collaborators, projects, exhibits, all kinds of stuff where it's like the project spans months, if not years, and you can't just. It was like I learned it didn't matter how many all-nighters I did. I think this was a lesson I learned with the book. It didn't matter how many all-nighters I did, I wouldn't finish it before I needed to sleep. So I might as well just sleep when I needed to and just work steadily on the project. And that's what finally got my book done. Like I kept trying to do these like intense bursts to get the work done. And it's like, no, I just need to clock the hours. And that seems probably fairly obvious to some people, but oddly enough, I think a lot of school teaches, or it taught me that like, or not taught me, it kind of put me into this semester mindset where there was like a lot of week-long projects. And so like if you have a project that's supposed to take a week, you can do an all-nighter and get it done. Does that make sense? Maybe, I don't know. Or once you get out into not school, or even maybe you get more to like graduate school or your PhD, you're no longer working in like 1 week modules. You're working on projects that span months and years and have complicated multi-layer steps that you have to stick to a process and do one thing before the other. And so it really becomes slow and steady wins the race. But on the flip side, I still have the capacity to knuckle down and put all of my focus into a single project and get it done quickly. So I haven't lost my capacity there, but I think I found, especially like I mentioned with my health issues before, like it's really vital. Like all-nighters are really unhealthy for me. And so kind of retraining myself over 20 years to not do that. I know I already mentioned this, I think it was in the first live stream about planning, how much I'm in love with Lisa Cogden's workflow and time management class on Creative Live. I'll have a link to that in the show notes too. And that it really helped me to kind of like work on projects in these steady drips versus these massive bursts. I had gotten better at it, but it was after reading that I had the tool to kind of like track all the ongoing projects I had. All right, there we go. It's done. Hey, now I can wear my... With the blue, my hands look like so crazy. There we go, that's a little better. I can wear my nightshirt now and not have it the front open up. That's wonderful. Okay, so now mending project number 2. What else we got going on? Well, here's the twist. Do I have the right thread? Yes, I do. Okay. This is mending project number 2. This is a project that was made by Deb Corey. It's a cute vintage shirt. It is white with little flowers on it and all the colors of the rainbow. It has a yoke neckline and a small collar. And I've mended this already a lot. In the armpits, the side seams, and I've replaced all the buttons. So I believe this was one of the shirts I wore during the photo shoot for my book. And Deb Corey, who was my neighbor growing up, also was a contributor to my book. And I just got an email from her, which I have not had an opportunity to read yet, about her contribution to my book and kind of what she's been up to. And she opted to, instead of like Zoom interviews, she's an amazing writer, and so she decided to write an article for the blog. And so that will be coming up next month. And I'm just looking forward to reading her words. So this cute little shirt, I love it, but I find that whenever I try to wear it, the yoke kind of comes out of place. So I'm not exactly sure. I think technically it would maybe kind of be a interface issue. But I think also this should have like a little prick stitch running through it. So I'm going to try that. This is one of those experimental mends where I'm like, I don't know if this is the right choice. So I will try it and we'll see what happens. That was the sound of my thread unspooling, which is kind of fun. Yeah, so I find it's like really important to kind of maintain this sense of, I'm really meandering through this. I think for the podcast, I'll probably shorten it down a bit. Okay, so I don't necessarily do all-nighters anymore. I've gotten a lot better at time management, but I have still retained the ability to just like knuckle down and work like crazy to get something done that is really important. Okay, so the next item, what's different, is when I was 19, I was really frustrated with slow moving organizational progress and like a lack of getting things done and things getting just, it's like, why are we still talking about this? Just let's do it. What do you mean it's got to go through 3 subcommittees? Like, let's just get this done. And while I still find I can be a little impatient, I do find that overall I have more appreciation in what a well-established organization can bring. And I try to be a little bit more patient with the process versus just like, I almost feel like I had a little bit of a like, if you're not with me, you're against me attitude. I'm still just as willing to branch out and do something on my own. This is going to sound so silly, but I'm like less resentful. And I still try to like bring alongside the more established organization once I get the project off the ground. So it's like before, it was very much like, say, I see a solution for a problem in the community, or there's a really cool project I want to pursue. And so I take it to a more established organization. And because of the red tape that they've created for themselves to ensure a fair, safe, legal project process, etc., to make sure that their stakeholders are satisfied, that they don't overcommit themselves. It's got to go through the board. It's got to get approval by the director. It's got to then get signed on by the staff and all these other things. And sometimes a lawyer has to be consulted. And like, I used to just hear the no and think that these people are a bunch of jerks and, what's their problem? Like, why won't they let me just do this awesome thing? Like, why are, like, and it really, I made it in my own mind a more divisive thing. And I didn't appreciate the burden that they were under, the weight of the obligations that they already had. And it wasn't that they were not supportive of the project in general and in theory, it's that they just couldn't see how it was possible, or that, and I guess this kind of leads into my next thing, is that at the time I was a really unknown factor. They didn't know me. They didn't know if I was going to be able to follow through. All those kinds of things. You can probably tell I'm thinking of a couple of specific projects. So, I branched out on my own and I got it done. But it was hard because it was like by brute force by myself. And I think a big difference that really can only come from spending time in a community is that now people know me and they know that if I say I am going to do this thing, I will do the thing. And so I've got a bit of community capital built up over the last 10, 15 years where I'm no longer an unknown equation. And so I think that's one of the pros that has come from that. And I think it's just a kinder perspective to have in general towards your local community organizations and groups that are kind of struggling to get their work done, is that when you bring them a really great idea, if they're in a hard place, it could just almost, even just hearing the idea could almost like put them in a state of overwhelm. Our poor local nonprofits, they've got a lot that they're trying to work on, but they don't have a lot of resources. So And I guess this leads me a little bit to the next thing, is that a lot of times I would, because of my mindset about this, that I would hear the no and it would make me feel resentful. The flip side is I would get really frustrated. I would do pretty impulsive things, not like terribly negative, but impulsive in the sense of like I would overcommit when maybe I myself should have been thinking things through a little bit more. And um and then maybe things would fail because I rushed them a bit, or because uh I didn't have enough resources, either like people or funding or time or whatever. And maybe it wouldn't go as great as I had hoped, and then it would kind of slump into a depression. So that still tends to happen from time to time, but it happens a lot less. And I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that I have a lot more patience with myself, with others, and with the process of like sometimes you've got to just navigate the technical, legal, whatever things to do the due diligence for the project to make it as successful as possible. Okay, so the next thing on my list. I have breakthroughs all the time when I was younger. And it kind of goes back to like everything's new. That's also like new thoughts, new ways of seeing things, new experiences, meeting new people, being exposed to new perspectives, new knowledge. You just like breakthroughs all the time. And you know what? I have found that has not stopped. Think of everything I've been saying about how much I'm raving about Lisa and her workflow management. Like, I've been working on time management stuff and workflow things and trying to do better in that arena. And she blew my mind right open. And it was amazing. And that just happened. Like, that's not something I learned when I was 20, that's something when I learned when I was like 37, 38. So there's still time for more breakthroughs. Honestly, I feel like this weekend was another big breakthrough weekend. When I rescheduled the live stream, I went and did this hermitage for 4 days, and I didn't work. There's a lot of work to get done right now, but I took this time that I had set aside, and I said it is okay to not work and to enjoy and replenish and be restored. And now I've been able to come back, and I feel more vibrant, more excited. I have so many ideas. I have so many solutions for the things that before I left, I felt like I had just been spinning my wheels on a couple problems. And I didn't sit down and have any like major brainstorming. I kind of took the shower approach, right? Where your best solutions come when you're not trying to think about them. Where it's like hiking in the woods for hours, and all of a sudden, like, this clarity would just kind of emerge about a particular issue that I was facing. And I don't know. So breakthroughs can still continue to happen if you're open to it. And I think that's a big thing, is like, how do you stay open to letting breakthroughs into your life? Like, I don't know. So I wrote, something like, let's see, the note I wrote to myself was, yes, set myself up for growth and staying optimistic, open to new things, and that I'm more comfortable with myself and my process. And by process, I mean like in the studio and just like I guess in life in general. And I'm just more comfortable with like what I'm about while staying pretty adaptable and open to changes in methods and ideas. So here's the thing, there's always a lot of debate about like whether or not you should hire more like lesser, oh, there's the craft cat, lesser experienced folks or more experienced folks in your business. Um, and for me, I found that the answer is a mix. I have a couple people working for me who are much more experienced, and they're amazing in what they bring to the table, including myself and Jason, right? Like we are now that experience set. Oh my goodness, Gregory is like, he finally made an appearance. I swear every time. He just jumped like right on. Hi, dude. Yeah, there he is. Okay, yeah, you're gonna lay on my mending. Here you go. I got a spot for him. Do you want to see? Yeah, there he is. Say hi, Gregory. Okay. Anyway, so one of the things that I love about living in Ames, or I would venture to guess any college town, is I really enjoy being around all the students. And like, we are in this neighborhood that is such a mix of established home and college rentals, really big mansions and low income housing. And it's wonderful. Like, I walk down my street and I say hi to all kinds of people. I think that's one of the reasons why we've stayed here in Ames, is that for a town in Iowa, it actually has a pretty good mix of people. Okay, Gregory, come on. Come on. This might be one of those times where he's just not going to be satisfied unless he is like in my lap. And I find that, you know, particularly when it comes to like employing younger people, like students, people younger than myself, like I think most of our employees are still in their 20s. Half of them are under 25. A couple of them, I didn't even realize this when we hired them, but they're like 19. And it really, like, it keeps me from getting cemented in my ways. I mean, I'm sure some people, they would say the same thing about their kids, right? That their kids keep them youthful. But I think the relationship you have with your children is very different than the relationship you have with your neighbors or with your staff, like with your employees. And so like they really challenge me in a way that as a parent I maybe would get like defensive about, or maybe not defensive about. Maybe it would just be a different dynamic. So, you know, we have like this marketing intern and they're like, "Why aren't you on TikTok?" You know, like, why are you doing this thing? Why do you operate like this? They make me think about the decisions I'm making. They make me consider new methods and you know, just new ways at looking at the world. Thinking a lot about current conversations on gender, on all kinds of things. I think I'd have a very different perspective if I wasn't surrounded by people half my age that have just a different way of walking through the world than I do as a 39-year-old, you know? And as much as I hate to say that, because when it comes down to it, like I had to think really hard about this list because I still feel very young. I still feel like there's so much to learn. I still feel really inexperienced and excited about life, and how do I hold on to that when Gregory, you're not helping me. Hi. Okay. I don't know if you all can hear him purring, but he is kind of hilarious. Oh my goodness. This is ridiculous. Okay, I'm like moving this big bulky cat onto my lap because that's just that's where we're at. He completely distracted me. That's okay. Maybe we are gonna go just straight to like 1 straight hour, right? Okay, so I think that's the thing, is that like in a lot of ways I feel like the same person as when I was 19. But I know, looking at it, like trying to take myself outside of myself, which is hard, I also know that while I'm still the same optimistic, enthusiastic person who is open to new experiences and ideas and all that jazz, it's tempered with experience and hopefully like a confidence that allows me not to be pulled quite all over the place and bouncing from one thing to the next and not really gaining traction anywhere. So kind of taking it back around to like how I decided to take my trip and to not live stream from the road and instead to just postpone a week. I think the thing is that I made this commitment to do these live streams once a month for an entire year. And for me, like, it's important to stay on that path. And that I made this commitment, and so I'm going to do it. But some months it looks different than others, and that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. I think we're about just wrapped up. So there's one thing I want to do. You guys are going to laugh. A few announcements. A little last couple notes. Okay. So my final thought, because I wrote this down too. The thing is that like life just keeps getting better, but it doesn't always feel that way. So like not to just be blindly optimistic. It doesn't always feel that way, and I know for some people it's not the case. But for me, it is. Every year builds on the experience of the last. And I recently heard this phrase where it was like having the confidence that the experience you're going through is the experience you need to teach you to develop you into the person you're meant to become. And while I know that that doesn't always ring true, especially in the thick of a really tragic or terrible experience, I think it is a way that you can remain positive about even the really hard times in your life, of which there are many. And, like as I age, my health and my ability to maintain momentum and my optimism are really my primary concerns. And keeping a really open and compassionate mind. At Littlewoods, I had developed this core philosophy that I try to teach all of our employees. And it really started as a personal mantra, which was to be kind and to be curious, which I know can sound a little cliche. Like, I know that, right? Be kind, be curious. It almost sounds like a chalkboard, but for me, it goes pretty deep. Like, it's about being kind to ourselves. It's about being kind to people who come in and visit our shop, being kind to our community, and being kind to our environment. It's not just about us. It's not just about the people we serve. It's not just about the community. It's not just about environmental concerns. It's about all of it, right? Like, be kind. Be kind to the earth. Be kind to each other. And the other thing is to be curious, like, it's not just like be kind, but like legitimately foster curiosity in ourselves, towards each other, towards the things around us, the people around us, the community we're in. Like, how do we maintain a healthy curiosity and openness? And how do we ignite that in the people who come and visit us? A lot of them we only have like a 5-10 minute action in or interaction with. And for me, it's really helped us to make a lot of decisions that from the outside make zero sense or like little sense. But from the inside, it's the perfect solution for us. It's not so important to find your life work or the goal that you're supposed to be working towards. Like, while I'm passionate about those things, I'm finding more and more that it's really important to find your compass. What is this? Like, I've read a lot of entrepreneurial books, and so I can't help but think of the phrase your guiding principles, which is like totally a business term. But it's true. Like, what are your guiding principles? And like, for your business, but also yourself. And so for me, I think my guiding principles are really to be kind and to be curious. And a lot of times flippantly, I'll just say something like, try not to be an a-hole. Like, if we could all just do that, I think the world would be a pretty great place. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's the best way to kind of wrap up my thoughts on my birthday, on how things have shifted over the last 10 years. I always find with the live stream that it takes me a little bit to almost like get warmed up into my topic. But that's a little bit of it too, like, right? Be kind to myself. Like, this is only my fourth time ever doing this in my life, right? Like, so here I am, and this is what's going on. So next time, I'm going to invite you all to craft with me, to bring your mending, and to come hang out. I'd really love to hear from you. And even if in the meantime, between here and now, like, let's do that. So, like, what did you think? Is your mind thinking back to the ways things have shifted, or what you hope shifts over the next 10 years? And that's great, because really this whole thing it truly is about that curiosity factor, like sparking your own curiosity about using what you already have, including your own life. So, make sure to check out the show notes for all the resources I mentioned and links to what's been inspiring me. And I'll make a transcription of the show too. And if you really just cannot get enough of Craft Leftovers and me, well, you should sign up for the free Craft Leftovers Club or the e-newsletter. And you'll get about 2 to 3 times a month, I send out a newsletter with updates on interviews and live streams, projects that I've been working on, and just more ideas on what's to use or how to use what's on hand over on craftleftovers.com. So I always forget to say this. So, of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review or comment, and all that goodness wherever you find this. And I guess with that, until next time.